Hi, I'm Mark.
This is exoticcarplayplace.
And today we are going to talk about Mercedes Benz depreciation and how much these legendary automobiles lose in the first 5 years. So Mercedes Benz is well known for its luxurious motoring and is highly respected for its innovation, luxury, and refinement. It is truly one of the best luxury cars on the market today. Now they come at a cost and they're very, very expensive brand new. And as a result, because they are a luxury car, they tend to lose a lot of value in the first 3 years, 4 and 5 years time. There's reasons for that. We'll share some of those reasons later on in the video. But before we get to that, I'm going to share with you some information that I have regarding specific models because they all depreciate at different rates. We are going to examine several models from the E-Class, S-Class, C-Class, and a C63 AMG, as well as the G-Class SUV. So we're going to research a little bit about each one of them, do a comparison, and we're going to talk about how much each model depreciates in the first 5 years. You're really going to love this if you're looking at a new or used Benz. If you're buying a new one, you're going to have to know how much you're going to face in terms of depreciation when you try to sell that car down the road. And if you're looking for possibly a used model around a 2014, 15, 16, you can get phenomenal deals in some of these models, and you're going to understand how much you can actually pay for some of these versions. So let's do a rundown about each one of these models. We'll do some market evaluation from what we find on Auto Trader, compare it to the brand new MSRP price from 2015. We can do a quick calculation and find out how much the average depreciation is. Now, let's start with the C-Class, which is the bottom of the barrel, and the C300 more specifically. So back in 2015, the base C300 had a standard MSRP of $39,325 US and up. So let's do a comparison with some models right now that we found on Auto Trader with reasonable miles, anywhere from 25 to 60,000 miles. So first what we find is a 2015 C300 with about 40,000 miles, and the current owner is asking $17,900 for that car. So that yields about a 45% retention value after 5 years, which would put it at about 55% depreciation. So 55% of its original value gone, up in smoke. So we have another 2015 with about 47,000 miles, and they're asking about $20,000. Now, being the base MSRP was about 40 grand, that yields about a 50% retention value. And as a result, 50% of the value of this car, perceived value, is also gone up in smoke. So we had yet one more, a 2015 that has about 60,000 miles. These folks are also asking about 20 grand. And again, as I said before, 40 grand is the base MSRP. That puts us at about 50% loss, or in fact, 50% retention value, depends how you look at it. So at the end of the day, the C-Class holds a pretty solid value. At 5 years, it's holding approximately 45 to 50% of its original value. Let's move up the ladder just a little bit and talk about the E-Class. And the E-Class, specifically one of the more popular versions, would be the E350. So at a base MSRP of just over $53,000 US when it was new, we can now search the Auto Trade's classifieds and make some quick comparisons. So firstly, we find a 2015 model with about 25,000 miles on it, and they're asking $22,500. Now, a quick calculation on the calculator reveals about a 42% retention value. Then we look at another 2015 model year with 33,000 miles on it, and they're asking $21,940. So in other words, it lost about 59% of its original value. Again, these are approximations. So if I could summarize, the E-Class after 5 years on average is losing close to 60% of its original value. You're closer to 40% of the original MSRP of that car. So let's climb that ladder 2 more rungs, and what do we stumble across? The C63S. So now we're talking about an AMG car. Now we always know the high performance cars hold a little stronger value, but let's look at some numbers. So a base C63S back in 2015 was worth approximately $73,000. But by the time you often outfitted it with the options that you wanted, you paid closer to $90,000. So let's split the difference, call it 80 grand. So let's compare that with some models that we can find on the Trader. Now I struggled to find specifically 2015s, so I looked at 2014s and 16s. Now this is a little bit of an outlier, but let's compare it with some 2016s, a year newer, and let's look at that. So we found one with 44,000 miles, and they're asking about $43,000 US. And another one with 70,000 miles, and they're asking about 42,000. So let's do a quick calculation. And after we punch out some numbers, what we're finding is this car is retaining over 50%. As a matter of fact, I calculated 54%, but of course these are 4-year-old cars versus the 5-year-old cars, and the curve tends to flatten out a bit. It becomes less steep as the car gets older. However, if I can extrapolate, I'd say we're looking at about a 50% retention. So on average, half of the price is retained with a C63S after you sell it in 5 years. So let's move up a couple more rungs yet. Let's talk about a G-Wagon. Now there's a few different engine configurations and that will vary the price significantly. So we can talk about G550s as well as the 63 AMG version as well. The G550 retailed approximately $116,000 US, while the AMG 63 version retailed for about $138,000 US. So a significant upgrade in terms of price, brand new. Now let's look at the used price market and do some comparisons with the G-Wagon. So I stumbled across a 2015 G-Wagon with 37,000 miles, and they were asking about $98,000 US. Now we look at some G550s, and I found one with 50,000 miles on it, and they're asking about $68,000 US. How about one more G550 for 9,600 miles, so very, very low, and the current owners are asking $95,000 US. So let's crunch some quick numbers here and spit that out for you. And we compare the higher mileage G550 to base MSRP as new, and it's still holding almost 59% of its original value, and that's with 80,000 kilometers or about 50,000 miles. So it's still holding really, really good, strong value. And then a quick number crunch on the ultra low mile G550 compared to the new price, and it spits out about 82% of its original value is retained. That's right, almost no money is lost if you keep the Ks low and you maintain these vehicles well. You won't lose a whole lot of money on these. The prices are sturdy on these G-Wagons and you really can't go too wrong. So now let's move into the granddaddy of Mercedes Benz, and that's the S-Class. Let's pick one out of the cluster that is fair to Midland, which is the S550, which is a good popular model. Now that version had a base MSRP when it was new of about $95,000 US. And these were absolutely sublime rides with amazing, extremely unbelievable rides. You had heated, cooled cup holders, heated armrests, massaging seats, and a whole plethora of features and options and technology that you couldn't find in any lower grade models. But unfortunately, when these cars get older, all this technology tends to become more of a burden than it does a benefit. So let's talk about some of the pricing on these. So let's look at some examples. In Auto Trader, I found a 2015 with 26,000 miles, and they're asking about $42,600. Found another 2015 with about 50,000 miles, and they're asking about $44,000. And then we find a 2015 Coupe with 34,000 miles, and it's a bit more of an outlier at about $56,000. It is a bit more of a premium for that car, so it doesn't quite tell the whole story. But the bottom line is, doing a quick calculation with the lowest cost one that we found, compared to the base MSRP, that car yields about a 44% retention value. In other words, about 56% of that car's value gone, up in smoke again. I'm giving you some baselines, some guidelines. The generalization that you can make on depreciation, and the S-Class is the worst of the bunch, while the G-Wagon is by far the best, and the AMG cars are somewhere in between. As you go more generic and higher end, you're going to see more depreciation because of the technology and because of the potential complications and expensive maintenance that you're going to experience. Not only that, an S-Class is really only second to a 7 Series in terms of German car depreciation. These cars take a hit. Why? Largely because the first owners want that car. They want the luxury. They pay a lot of money for it, and they have the money to either lease it, buy it, or whatever they will with it. The problem is, down the line, after 5 years, nobody wants them. The youthful market is not looking for a massive giant of a car like an S-Class. They're looking more for the AMGs, maybe a well-decked out E-Class, something like that. But to look for an S-Class, nobody wants them on the used car market. Couple that with the fact that they're overly complicated with extra innovation, technology, and whatnot, makes them very difficult to sell, and it drives the prices down. So the AMGs, because they're hot rods and they're not quite as expensive as, say, for example, a mid-level S-Class, the AMGs appeal to a younger audience, and those are often the folks that are picking these cars up at second, third, fourth owners. So often they tend to hold their value. The clubs, the enthusiasts often pursue the AMG cars a lot more. So the numbers I gave you are actually inflated and somewhat ballooned. Why is that? Why are you giving us these numbers? Well, that's because that's what people are asking on the trader, and this is a real world number. So it is real. It's not some falsified black book banking number that is thrown out there to minimize and stretch that differential to the maximum. These are real numbers. But the reality is you can get these cars for less money because nobody pays what people are asking when you're buying a used car. MSRP is fixed, but what owners are selling their used cars for is quite variable. If somebody's asking 50 grand, more often than not, you're going to get that car for 40 or 45. That's called negotiations and bargaining. So if I'm saying that the calculated value is, say, a 40% retention, then likely it's more like a 30 to 35 because most of the time people are going to negotiate. So these values are just based on strictly the ask. I'll give you one example. The S-Class, based on many studies in the industry, actually state that the S-Class holds more like a 30% retention value after 5 years versus the 40 and change that I provided. Again, some of it has to do with the black book. Some of it has to do with the final negotiated price on some of these cars in the used car market. But the reality is this just gives you a bit of an indication of what you can expect. Now, on that note, there's two things to deduce from this. Buying the more premium versions of any of these cars is going to hit you hard. If you're buying the car new and you're trying to sell it on the used car market after 5 years, you're going to take a hit, especially in the S-Class, maybe the E-Class. They're going to hurt you. The base model C-Classes aren't going to do that well either. If you want to hold a better value and you're buying the car new, look at an AMG, possibly a G-Wagon. Now, on the other hand, if you're a used car buyer and you don't have the money for that new Mercedes Benz, you have a plethora of choices from S-Class, E-Class, C-Class, CLA, GLA, G-Class, GLs, AMGs throughout every series. There are lots of selections. And the beauty is if you can afford it and you have a few extra dollars in the bank to support any kind of unexpected repairs or maintenance, you can get yourself an outstanding top-level Mercedes Benz late model car for very little money, anywhere from 30, 40 to 50% of its original value. Some outstanding cars for one of the most epic luxury cars available in the market today. So I know you guys enjoyed the video, but if you want to learn a little bit more about depreciation, click the link over here for Lexus depreciation and click the link over here for BMW depreciation. You're going to learn a lot more. And at the very least, hit the subscribe button if you're already a subscriber. Thanks a lot for coming around again, guys. I really, really do appreciate it. Really hope to catch you on the next one. See you soon. Bye-bye.